welcome Jaimie Abbott to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really stoked to have been asked to be on your fabulous podcast. Thank you.
I'm so stoked that you said yes. I'd love for you to just start by sharing with the audience a little bit about who is Jaimie Abbott and what does she do?
Yeah, great question. I do all things, but I think my background is really in media. So I started out as a journalist. I was a TV and radio journalist for many years in Sydney and regional New South Wales in Australia. And then I got into politics and the military, and I'm still in the Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force Reserves, where I work as a PR officer. I did 6 months in Afghanistan, where I set up the very first media training package, training people from all over the world how to master their messages and communicate on camera in particular, because we were doing really large press conferences over there. Then when I came back from Afghanistan, I've had a run for politics. I was elected as a local independent councillor in Port Stephens, which is in New South Wales, Australia, where I live, and had 4.5 years there as a politician. Made lots of mistakes as a spokesperson myself. So sometimes I would master it, other times I wouldn't. And so I've set my company up. It's been 10 years now. I'm training people how to be a great public speaker. I've got some PR clients as well. And really in the last 12 to 18 months is when I've pushed the online business side of things. So I now teach people how to not only become an amazing public speaker, but how to get paid for it, and also how to do their own public relations. And the online stuff I've just loving and haven't really looked back ever since I got into this world.
I love it. And I'm sure that people that are listening right now can just hear the amount of experience and training in your voice. The way you speak is so incredible because there's no ums, there's no ahs, there's pauses, but there's pauses for effect. And you can just tell like there's a lot that has gone into the work that you've done. But I want to know a little bit more about why you moved, because you've had quite the career progression really into a few different areas, a lot of speaking in all of it, but why you wanted to make that move to online and helping people get paid to speak.
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts to that. So the online part, I think for a lot of us during COVID, I had always done in-person workshops, and then COVID brought all that to a halt. And so I got into the online space as a student, really, to start with. I loved consuming content from the comfort of my own home, and I definitely wanted to get into that space first. And then I guess simultaneously to that, I was charging as a speaker and not charging enough, to be honest. So here and there, I would do maybe $500, $1,000. Would that be a good day? Where I would charge to speak. And I live in Newcastle, which is 2 hours north of Sydney in Australia. And it's a 2-hour drive each way to get to Sydney. And I would charge, $500, and it sort of zaps you. For those of us who do speaking, you're wiped out the next day. And then it was December 2021. So a bit over 18 months ago now, I was asked to speak for a corporate client, and I had no time. I've got 2 little toddlers, and I could not fit this speaking gig into the schedule. And so I charged the client, I quoted the client $30,000, which, in hindsight, probably would have been maybe 6 times the amount I would have normally charged, maybe even more, because 5,000 would have been great it was a full day gig. And they took 45 minutes to accept that quote of $30,000. And it was a real landmark sort of moment for me, Em, because up until that point, I realized I'd been undercharging, and I've been telling my clients in my PR side of the business to undercharge. And so from that moment on, I certainly did make time for that gig. I fit it into the schedule for that amount of money,
right?
But something else had to give.
I can find a nanny for that, so that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've definitely canceled something else in the diary. And after that moment, I thought, well, I'm now going to not charge anything less than 10,000 for these keynote gigs that I'm doing. And I think once you get into this world, you realize there are a lot more speaking opportunities out there than there are speakers. And so when I did that particular gig, I got off the stage, ended up being a virtual stage. I did it via Zoom. And they said to me, do you know anyone else that could speak? We just don't care who they are as long as they're inspiring. Our budget's 10,000 for a 45-minute Zoom keynote presentation. And I didn't really know anyone at the time. And I certainly have a black book now. Yeah. And I just thought, wow, people need to know about this. And so that's where Paid to Speak was born. And the next 5 months, I created a course teaching people how to find these gigs, what topics sell, how much to charge, what to do if the client says you're out of their budget, all these tricks. And now I'm really proud that over 100 people have gone through the course, and now they're charging 10,000 a gig. And it's just this incredible flow on effect. And it's definitely what I'm meant to be doing in life. I have no doubt about that.
I love it. Wow. Yeah. $10,000 for a virtual 45-minute presentation is phenomenal. That's like the dream. And I know there'll be people listening to this going, how is that possible? So let's kind of take a step back and think about what the essential steps are for someone in business. So that people that are listening to this are women in business. And obviously it's amazing for them to get in front of people and share their expertise. But what do they need to do to go from, okay, I have a business, I'm an expert in what I do, to getting on stage and getting paid to do that? I know there's probably a lot of steps, but what are the overall steps?
Yeah, it's actually easier than you think. And I really want to make that point. I'm very passionate about this, and in particular with women in business. Women in particular, we have, and I know this now, I've been a mum, and not everyone's a mum, but I just didn't realize how hard it was until I became a parent. You make so many sacrifices, not just as a parent, but as a woman in business, we tend to undersell ourselves. We give away our knowledge for free. You've done the hard yards. You've worked for free. You've studied. You've put yourself through sleepless nights. You've sacrificed to whether it be going out, mixing with your friends to run your business. You've put those lessons learned out there. Don't give that away for free. All that built up knowledge in your head. And so really the difference between people who are getting these gigs and the people who are not, it comes down to pitching. If you're pitching yourself, you're actually putting yourself out there, you would be amazed at just how many people are desperate for speakers. Even EAs for large corporate companies, they are often given the task of trying to find a speaker for maybe a strategic planning day or maybe an annual corporate event that the company hosts. And they just want some sort of inspiring keynote speaker. The brief is very long, very vague. It's not very specific. They just want an amazing speaker who's going to entertain, educate, inspire their staff, their audience, and you fall into their lap at the right place at the right time. Bam. And then once you're up on stage, it's incredible the flow on effects that has. Someone sees you speaking there, you're sitting in the audience and they love you, which they do. They'll then come up to you and want to book you again. And then you video that event, you put it out there, and just more and more flow. And it's very, very quick process. Once you start getting some of these high value gigs, it's amazing the amount that flows on from that. But at the end of the day, if you're pitching yourself, you're putting yourself out there, you're going to get the gigs.
And when you get the gig, what if you've never done a paid speaking gig before and you're nervous about that moment where you're up there and you've got to perform? You've got to really stand out and you want to get that good feedback, right? So maybe could you share some of your tips around how you create an engaging presentation? I was going to say performance. It is like a performance, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What is the most important parts of an engaging presentation / performance?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, gosh, this is a whole day workshop, but that was a great question. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to start with, because people are coming there with an open mind. They've come along to learn from you, and they're not judging you. I mean, I've done a lot of political debates where they hated me before I even opened my mouth, and that's politics. So that's the only exception. The rest of the time, the audience is coming there to take something away from what you've got to share. You're never ready either. People always say, oh, I'm not ready yet. I need to get a few more confidence skills up, or I need to get my website up, or I need to really refine my keynote. If you've got the gig, you're ready, and you're always learning anyway. And if you always wait till you're ready, you'll never be ready. But there are some tips you can do to make your presentation so much more engaging. And it depends on the audience, depends on the amount of time. But for a standard keynote, what you want is to try and touch into everyone's learning ability. So you're a teacher background. People learn from the auditory, the visual. So they like to see slides. They like to be involved with even little things like opening up your presentation with who here, let's see a show of hands, who here has done this. You raise your hand and people will respond visually by seeing you raise your hand. Sometimes you can inject some really great activities into your presentation, such as turn to the person next to you and identify your top 3 ways that blah, blah, blah. And then you can share that, and you're getting the audience involved rather than them just sitting there listening to you. You're tapping into all their different senses, their visual with the keynote, the slides, you're moving around the stage, you're asking people to show a volunteer to maybe share their answer to a question. All those types of tips is going to lead you to be a much more engaging presenter. The audience will then love you and they'll book you again, and you'll keep getting more and more. But at the end of the day, the more you do this, the more confident you get, and that's when you can feel confident to inject some of these pretty cool engagement little strategies into your presentation.
And do you suggest that people start off doing free presentations to get some experience before going for paid presentations, or would you suggest just go straight for the paid ones?
I mean, a bit of both. Like, there's definitely merit. And even now, I would probably even do maybe 50% of my speaking gigs are complimentary. I don't charge in exchange for having access to my ideal customers. So I know people that are going to buy my course or join my PR club or even want to engage with me as a coach for ongoing coaching. If I know they're in the audience, I'll do it for free. And so if you do it for free, especially when starting out, you want to be able to film yourself on stage, because that's providing some social proof. You're building up your toolkit. You can then share that and people can see you in action. By filming yourself as well, you then have something to give to speaker bureaus. And speaker bureaus are kind of like an agency where some clients will only go to book their speaker through an agency. And so if you've got yourself on one of these speaker bureau websites, you're then getting access to all these corporate clients that you wouldn't otherwise get access to. But to get on those speaker bureaus, you need to have some sort of show reel. So by doing those free speaking events, asking the organizer if you can film, you're going to start building up that show reel. And so in many cases now, it's actually better financially for me in the long run to do something for free, because I could walk off stage with $20,000 in course sales or coaching services. And so it's about picking your mark. But then it's that balance. You know, sometimes you get off stage and you'll think, I should have charged for that, or I should have charged a lot more. The delegates in the audience are paying $3,000 for this conference. The organizer's making money out of me being a draw card. I should charge for that. And so that's what I teach people: when you should charge, how much you should charge. If you do it for free, what you can ask for, such as the opportunity to pitch your services and to film yourself as well.
I think that's one of the questions that would come up a lot for people early on in a speaking career, isn't it? Where it's, what do I charge and how do I know? For me, I think of it as an energetic exchange, because if you're not getting paid, yes, can you get professional photography? Can you pitch what it is that you're selling? Can you take, a book that you've written? And I mean, do you have any more tips that you could give, insights around pricing? Because I know I've had clients come to me about this too, and it's a really tricky one and you're not always going to get it right. But what would you say are your top tips around pricing?
My number one tip is generally charge a lot more than what you think. Women in particular undervalue themselves so much. So even my coaching services, for example, when I was charging $3.99 an hour for an hour Zoom with me, I had crickets. The minute I put my coaching service up to $8.99 an hour, and you hear coaches say this stuff all the time, I'm now booked 3 times a week of coaching calls. And it's a perception thing. So often, and I hate it when I send a quote to a client, and we'd all relate to this, and they accept it straight away. And then you go, oh, I should have charged a lot more.
Yes,
so generally, you're better off quoting higher, because then they can always come back and say that's out of our budget. Then opens a conversation to say, well, what is your budget? You can then negotiate with that. So generally, I would always urge on charging a lot more, because knowing you undervalue yourself. And also it's the hidden costs. So you think, oh, $10,000 for a speaking gig in your nearest capital city. I live 2 hours from a capital city. I am then wiped out the day before, at least prepping, and then probably a bit more in before, where I'm having some initial meetings with the clients, driving down and back, putting all my energy in to the actual keynote. I usually stick around as long as it takes afterwards, because I think that provides a great value experience for the client if I get to stick around and answer questions offline and hang for lunch. People love that. And then that often leads to more bookings. And then you're wiped out the next day as well. So it's not just that 45 minutes you're on stage. You really need to factor that in when you are pricing. But generally, price and charge more than what you think. And it's, it's that $1 million question every day. People say, should I charge more? Am I charging enough? At the end of the day, it needs to be worth it for you, but really think about who is going to be in the audience. And if you can't pitch, if you're not allowed to pitch yourself, don't do it for free. Yes. Charge. No. But at the very least, you want to have something, because just expect the audience are going to love you, right? So you want to have something which is on offer, and it's usually a 1-hour coaching call with you for those audience members who go, I love that presentation. I want to see more of you. How can I work with you? How can I ask you questions about my own career or my own business? You always want to say, well, here's what I prepared earlier. Here's the link to my coaching page. At the very least, for those people who want more from you, you've got that. And then that's another sort of monetary reward you can add on to any speaking gig as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of the key questions that you proposed there that I love, what's your budget? If you can use that in the conversation, because then you kind of have an idea of what it is that they're looking for. And sometimes you'll be totally surprised, like that company that said $10,000 is our budget. It's like, great, for 45 minutes. Brilliant. I'm sure I can find someone happy to do that. And the other one was, is it worth it for me? And what would make it worth it for me? Because if it's 2 hours travel, plus the keynote, plus the time before and after, plus all of your experience and your expertise, it's not just that 45 minutes, it's everything that's got you to that point. It is probably worth just adding a zero.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is.
There's been
That
times
sounds
where
really
I wish
high.
I did that. I am on a speaker bureau page, and to start with, you don't find out who is contacting you, what organization is contacting you. You just get the name of the person. So I didn't realize it was a very large mining company contacting me. And it wasn't until after I'd given them the quote that I found that out. And I was like, I should have added a zero, because I guarantee their budget was huge. And I definitely undersold. I can't remember what it was. I think it was about $1,000 for a 45-minute keynote. And it was heaps of fun and I loved it. And I got, it was still absolutely worth it for me. But I remember when I finally heard what the organization was, I was like, damn it, I know they would have had a huge budget and I definitely could have charged more. But, it's a lesson.
Yeah, the speaker bureau really should work with you in that situation and give you a bit more detail, because they get commission. Speaker bureaus can take anything from, I even heard the other day, someone who went through my paid to speak course and they're now on a speaker bureau talking about 40% commission, which sounds like really high, not terrible, but that was a $10,000 gig. So they're paying the speaker bureau $4,000. They're still pocketing $6,000, gross. And that's $6,000 income they wouldn't have received if they weren't on the speaker bureau. The speaker bureau got the gig for them. So I think you need to work that out, whether it's worth it still. And noting that commission, the speaker bureau want you to charge higher as well, because they make more money. So yeah, it's just something to factor in there.
Yeah, really interesting. The one that I've worked with is only about 10%. And I still sometimes think, oh my gosh, like that's a chunk of money once you take off your tax and take off everything else. As we know in business, you don't get paid what you charge. And that's important to make sure you take into account when you're pricing as well. Let's go into pitching. You mentioned we just need to start pitching ourselves. So how does one pitch, and where do you pitch to? How do you find the people to pitch to?
Yeah, great question. So there's some low-hanging fruits, like I like to say, that you can actually do to find some gigs. And even a really basic one, a little tip to give you all, is a hashtag search. So you can just do a hashtag search on the words speakers wanted, leadership speakers wanted, call for speakers. And then you can change it around, call for speakers Sydney, call for speakers Perth. And it's incredible what you'll pick up on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can do a hashtag search as well, and also Facebook. I've scored some pretty big ones virtually online for overseas. So I did one in Dubai the other day. It was an online virtual summit and was able to pitch. And I picked that up through an Instagram hashtag search. With the corporate companies, a lot of LinkedIn ones will put that call out there. And it's great to get into a habit of checking these hashtags too, because what's there today may not have been there yesterday. Another little great strategy is to just do a Google search, call for speakers Perth 2023, leadership speakers wanted, speakers apply here, and getting into a Google search habit. There's also a new feature, well, it's fairly new, called Google Events. You can type in Google Events and it'll give you all, then you type in your actual event. So I'm going to London soon in late August, and I've literally just gone in and typed in London speakers wanted, London events, and then looked at the dates, pitched myself as a speaker for those events in London through Google Events. And so I literally just contact them and say, and I give my one sheet, so a one-page PDF, little bio snapshot and of myself, and I also have a corporate training proposal, little template that I've created on Canva, which is about 7 pages. And it covers all my topics and my testimonials, AV requirements, all that sort of thing. And then I just attach it with an email, very personalized email. And I'll say, I noticed you've got this mining conference coming up. I'm a speaker, would love to speak at your events. A little bit about me. I've attached my bio. Please let me know if you have any questions. And literally so many times, just by falling into someone's lap, allow their inbox with a really succinct pitch, straight to the point, really focused on what value I can provide the audience members, it's scored me some big gigs in the past. And so the people who are getting these gigs and the ones who aren't, honestly, the difference is their pitching. You just keep pitching. And even with the corporates, I average about 1 yes to 400 no's, or one in 400. So 1 yes to 399 no's. And that's because we're pitching to big corporates. When I say we, I've got a virtual assistant who helps me, and she has a template, and we literally just pitch to these companies. And I've scored some big ones from doing that. And I'm not afraid of the rejection. I'm not afraid of companies saying no, because when the company does say yes, it's really a big gold nugget as far as monetary compensation goes, and the profile of these companies to then put that onto my website. It's totally worth doing it.
And I think we need to speak into this for a moment, because how many people can handle 399 no's, right? And I know we've talked about this before, because it's one of those things that stops people, because they think, I'm just going to get a no, or I'm going to be ghosted, I'm not going to hear back. You've said that it doesn't bother you, but how do you overcome it, or how do you teach people to overcome it? Because I'm sure you know that other people probably feel a little bit about receiving 399 no's for 1 yes.
Yeah, well, I think hopefully just by me talking about it right now, people who are listening are going, okay, well, that's what I can expect. It's an expectation management thing. It's not an actual no all the time. It's always just they don't write back. And when I look at my hit rate, I might score a Commonwealth Bank, for example, but I also didn't hear back from the other 399 companies. And when I say companies, we will often pitch to 20, 30 people from a company, and we go through LinkedIn. We get the names of the decision makers. We then find their emails through some very cool tools that I teach. And then we pitch to, say, 20 people in that one company, not all at once, but then that's counted as 20 no's if that company didn't write back, or they said, what you'll often get is they'll say, we've already got a supplier that we use. We've got a preferred supplier or something like that. But then I will follow up, get into a habit. I reached out to you 6 months ago. And let me tell you, those follow-ups are key. Very, very useful to have a sort of a follow-up strategy. And it's the same with anything in business. You get a lead or an inquiry through, we often don't follow up. And when I follow up, it just puts you front of mind for that person who is inquiring. There's also little techniques you can do with speaker kits. People who download my speaker kit now through my website, they have to opt in with a form. I then get their name and email. And then a couple of weeks later, I've got an automation set up which says, I know you downloaded my speaker kit a couple of weeks ago, just touching base to see if you found a speaker. Do you have any questions? And it's that follow-up automated prompt where I get a lot of these gigs. So to answer your question, I just hope by putting it out there and saying you're going to get rejection emails or just not hear anything from not only the companies you're pitching to, but even podcast hosts. I find podcast guesting, that's why I'm here today, one of the number one effective PR strategies. It used to be media releases, and now I'd probably say podcast guesting is my number one strategy as far as being able to elevate your audience, piggyback on someone else's audience, as long as you're providing value like I am now. But I think when you're pitching yourself to be a podcast guest, expect 1 in 20 to say yes. It's probably 1 in 10 nowadays for me, but when I first started out only 18 months ago, it was 1 in 20 would say yes. So if you expect that, you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is really good to give people the realistic approach to it and know that it's okay. If Jaimie Abbott is going out there and getting 399 no's to 1 epic yes, then it's absolutely worth the energy. And I love that you brought up about the follow-ups, because this is something I share with my clients all the time. It's not about getting paid to speak, but just with anything in general. I actually found a stat on this recently, and apparently it's something like 40 something percent. I can't remember the exact number. Your yes rate increases by about 40 something percent for every time you follow up, because people do forget and they need to be exposed more often. I know for myself, it's with clients, or, there was a time where I got a follow-up magazine blog article that I thought it was a no, but it became a yes because I followed up, and it just makes such a huge difference. So I'm glad that you touched on that. I have one more question about this process, and it's how you track all of this, because if you've got 400 different companies that you're contacting, 20 are from they're not all from different companies, but 20 are from the same company. And then you're tracking follow-ups, and it seems complex. I know you've got a VA. I'm assuming you have one epic system.
Look, I'm actually a really disorganized person. I'll put that out there. I'm a creative. We're disorganized. My inbox is a mess, but I just use the free version of Trello, and we literally just have a board called Corporate Contacts, and we just have a different company mentioned for, you know, Commonwealth Bank would have its own little board or whatever you call them. Then you click on the Commonwealth Bank one, and we actually write down all the names and emails from those people, their position, their titles, so EA or HR manager, training and development manager, CEO, general manager, and we have them all listed, and we have a little checklist where we click that we've followed, have already sent it to them. Then when we get a reply back, we actually have full tracking system of, you know, who wrote back, what they said, and all that sort of stuff. It's very easy. It's a free version of Trello. It's nothing complex. I've tried so many different project management software tools. We also do it for our podcast guest pitching as well, because otherwise you'd be re-pitching to the same person cold, and you know, and you also, you want to listen to their podcast as well. I will just say that when you're pitching yourself, I made this mistake. You definitely want to listen to their episodes. I remember we just did a blanket pitch when I first started out, and one of the podcast hosts wrote back to me and said, just want to confirm that you have ADHD, because you know our podcast is for ADHD business owners. And I didn't listen to it. You know, it was a cold VA sent pitch, and that was a lesson learned. So don't ever do that. And you know, and I also now will pick my podcasts where I can actually add value. So I know, you know, your audience, and we're going to be lapping this up what I'm talking about today, because it affects so many of them. And so I'm going to listen to your podcast and really get a vibe for the questions you ask, your format, what other people are interested in, your other guests, all that sort of thing. So I really recommend that, because otherwise you're wasting your time just pitching cold. You know, when I'm a podcast host, I've got my own podcast, and I know when someone's pitching to me and it's generic. So all those things that we send out, we put it into Trello.
Yes. Okay. That's really good to know that it's just a simple Trello boards. It's probably a matter of getting it set up and then training your team to navigate it and manage it as things are coming through. I love that. Keep it simple. And it's so good to hear that you're disorganized, because I also am. I also would love afterwards if you can let me know what podcast that was that speaks to people with ADHD that have businesses. Because hello, I have ADHD. So maybe
well, I will. I'll tell you. I mean, there's obviously a huge market. I probably have it undiagnosed, to be honest. So many of us do, you know, with our short attention spans and all the different traits. But yes, I will let you know for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So this episode is going to come out on the 8th of August, and I believe there is something very exciting happening in your world on that date.
It is. So I have PR Club open, which is my signature membership. We've got 70 or just over 70 members now. And it's just basically a low-cost membership where I do a different masterclass every month. And it's PR focused. A lot of people have come from paid to speak, but it's not a definite prerequisite. A lot of people just want to elevate their profile. So I cover things like writing media releases, how to score corporate clients, what we've talked about today. I show you how to go through and basically scrape the internet for anyone's email address. You get over 1,200 email contacts of journalists, their names, their phone numbers, their direct emails. And that's everyone from The Project, you know, that TV show in Australia, to Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, the Australian newspaper, radio, ABC, all the different journalists. And every month is a different topic. And so this month, we're actually talking about how to market yourself without social media. And so there's a whole heap of people jumping in at the moment because they hate social media and they know we're focused on things like podcast guesting and all that sort of thing. So yeah, prclub.com.au. Would love to have you in. There's no lock-in contract or anything like that. But I'm just very passionate about showing people how to do their own PR and how to promote themselves.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely go and check that out. There'll be a link in the show notes. And for anyone else listening, oh, you know what? I didn't do my question that I always do. I always forget this question, and I say it in every episode. I'm like, forgotten the question. Before we get into what else is coming up in your business, can you share with everyone what's one thing that makes you feel unstoppable in business?
Well, look, it's momentum, and the momentum comes from consistency. That sounds boring, but it's actually really easy and practical. People don't show up enough online, and it's all the things, right? You know, it's the podcast guesting, it's pitching to journalists through SourceBottle, getting in the media, it's doing reels, it's doing masterclasses, webinars, sending out your emails, nurturing your list. But one easy thing people don't do is just Instagram stories, literally stopping, documenting in the moment what you are up to, what you've been up to that day. And it can be something so boring. Like, just had 3 podcast interviews today. I'm about to go to the gym, had a sleepless night with my 3-year-old last night. Shout out to all the working mums out there. And I hope you have a great afternoon. People love that behind the scenes glimpse into your day. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to script it. You're literally stopping and going, what have I done today? What am I doing today? What's going through my head? That's the content people love. And I will do that at least 5 times a week. I try and do it every day, but weekends are hard with 2 little toddlers. But just 5 times a week, I will just stop, document it. And I've just noticed when it's those less scripted, natural, almost vulnerable posts, and it can be business, life, personal, gym, they just get the most amount of engagement, the most amount of messages. And it's just a really great way to build up that know, like, and trust factor. And if you do this consistently, it doesn't even take that long. Couple of months, you will be unstoppable in business. Absolutely.
I love this. And you know what? I love that it's simple. And you're not the only person to say what makes me feel unstoppable is a little bit boring, but at least it is, because then it's like there's no excuse, right? It's not complicated. It's just a straightforward thing to do in your business. So I love that. And thank you for sharing. Now we will go back to what I was going to say before, which was what's coming up apart from the 8th, what's it called? The pitch.
The PR club. Yeah.
The PR club.
Yeah.
That's coming up on the 8th. What else is coming up in your business and your world for the rest of the year, let's say? Give us
for sure. Yeah, I know it's really going fast. So I launched my pay to speak course twice a year, June and November. And so doors will open again in November. So if you want to join the waitlist, you can at paidtospeak.com.au. If you join from the waitlist, you get a one-on-one session with me and a whole stack of bonuses as well. We've now had 102 people go through the course. It's only been around for just over 12 months. People are getting results. If you go onto the webpage, you'll see all the testimonials on there. It's pretty exciting because if you do all the steps I teach you in the course, you'll get paid speaking gigs. It's all laid out for you, the templates, even speaker contracts that you can use, copy and paste, all your bios. I really open up my book, and I'm an open book, I should say, in regards to how much I charge for all different types of events. And yeah, I'm really excited about that opening the doors again in November.
Yeah, amazing. So we'll make sure there's a link to the waitlist as well. And you're going to London.
I am about to go to London. So that's actually a really funny thing. I just wanted to go to London. So I booked flights at the start of the year and started locking in speaking gigs after that. And so not only have I locked in speaking gigs, which has covered my flights, I've now put on a workshop in London. And I'm like, I'm going to be in London on this day. I booked a venue, paid for the venue, which is a risk. Especially it's really expensive over there to pay for a venue and even book a screen projector. It was like $300 Australian for 3 hours, whatever. And so now I'm filling that up and I'm promoting that. I'm doing Facebook ads in London, promoting entrepreneurs, course creators, people who like Tony Robbins, Brene Brown, Elizabeth Gilbert, those types of people I'm trying to target who just love that kind of stuff. It just tends to attract like-minded people who have a lot of great knowledge to share and want to be a speaker. And so I'm teaching people how to get paid to speak. So you can join that. I've got a couple of tickets left at jaimieabbott.com.au/London.
I love that. How good. I mean, that's the dream that we all want to live, right? I want to go to London. I'm going to book that. And then I'll just find some speaking gigs and then I'll run a workshop and it'll all be paid for. And I get to have a bit of a summer European holiday at the same time. Like, we're winning.
It's all legal. Just to clarify, my accountant this morning came up to me and because he didn't know I was going. I saw him at a business breakfast this morning and he said, "What are you doing in London?" Like, I'm working.
Yeah, well, you are. You absolutely are.
I genuinely am. Yes.
There's ways, I know, like we want to make sure that we can make part of our holiday tax deductible. Why not? Right? You're already going to be there, so you may as well make part of it tax deductible. This is not financial advice, anybody. You're not coming to
no.
I'm not coming to Jaimie or MG for financial advice.
It's also risky to book a venue without having any bums on seats yet, but that's what you got to do in business. Take risks, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? I think people in London will lap it up. They've got this incredible Aussie woman coming over to, like, she's an international speaker, right? They're going to love it. And yeah, they love Aussies over there.
I hope so. That's the plan anyway. If you're listening and you're in London right now, 21st of August is the workshop. So I'll see you there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all of your expertise and bringing your energy to this podcast today. It's been amazing. And I'm so sure that everyone has got so much out of what you've shared.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.